This is the one here that we're going to be doing tonight. Starting taking it apart. It's not something that can be taken apart, you know, in just a couple hours or whatever. This is quite a process to do this. But what we can do today is just review what we have right here. This is how a lot of times I get the worst of the worst come in, and you can see you know, what it's like in my trade to do the type of work that I do, and this is its natural state. And this came from a woman executive that was working for a well-known fabric chain. She had called me up. I did some work for her, and she asked me if I wanted this particular piece. And I'm not really in the market of buying old furniture, but this is something that I do like to do because something that's never been molested. By being unmolested means that it's intact. The original padding. You get to see something the way it was put together, and it's really neat. When I was a little kid, working in with my dad, it was more common to see these types of pieces. And in the span of things, I've been doing this thing for 40 years. That's nothing compared to something that's hundreds of years old. That seems a long time for us being alive today, but not for something of this history like this. It's just been around before, you know, any World War, you know, and so it's seen a lot. It's been around and hasn't been thrown out, and it was well made. And this piece is well, I would say this is 200 years old. I believe it to be, because I did find some things on inside here through one of the arms over here. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm not 100% sure as far as something's age, but we're going to take it apart. There's very high probability we're going to find things on the inside of this thing that have been, you know, many years ago. They were lost because they fall in the cracks. I'm sure that some kid 150 years ago jumped up and down on this and it survived. And that kid is now dead of old age. So what we have here is this piece here. It had this might have been done. This looks like something that was done in the 1920s. 1930s, this type of cover was put over this, and this is something that, like, you know, like a housewife would have done if she was home and she had her kids and she wanted a project to do, didn't have a lot of money to spend. She covered over the original woven horsehair fabric. Now, it's got a lot of nubs. Some of the older generation talk about sitting on their grandparents' piece of furniture wearing shorts and having the hairs poke through. That is a characteristic of this fabric. But, you know, there wasn't really a whole lot of things that they had that they were really being used back then. They had tapestries and fabrics, but this type of fabric was popular. And then there was leather too, but you wouldn't really find leather put on a piece like this, though. You don't see it. And I've worked on quite a few of these old pieces of this generation over the years, and they typically have this type of woven horsehair fabric. Now, these backs are secured. This is how they are made here. Now, you look at the back here, and you can see how somebody had made this back in the day. We've got some repair here that has to be done, where the wood has split. Wide boards, characteristic of the old pieces like that. And then you have the original screws. And then you can actually see the back, the knot like that. You know, people would say, "Oh, you know, the old days, you know, they craftsmanship and stuff." You know, you wouldn't want to put together. If nowadays people would have a coronary if they saw you put together a sofa with a knot like that in the back, and with a plug that's ready you could push out on the other side. But in the old days, the wood was an expense. That's just plain and simple. And so you know, they tried to cut costs too. And then you had veneers and so on up here. This is all veneered over. And a lot of times I've seen, you know, where the veneer would be peeled and there'd be a big knot right underneath the veneer. But, you know, it's lasted. You know, in the old days, from my understanding, that the people that carved these pieces of furniture, generally, when it got older, they were making the furniture and doing everything. They were doing the upholstery. I found it inside. I found on the lining on the inside, I found a name, F.H. Eaton. That's what his name was. And I didn't think nothing of it. Well, it turns out there was a wagon maker in town here in Stafford Springs back in the 1800s, and they made wagons. But they'd also upholster the seats in the wagons, so it would be very natural for them to do the upholstery, you know, on the furniture itself. It's just like, you know, they would do more than one thing, just like barbers back in the day. Well, you know, get your hair cut and get a limb amputated too, you could have done. But nowadays we don't go to barbers to have limbs amputated. So we got to take this apart here. We got the backs here. This one comes off too. It was just propped up there, not holding very well. You can see I was moving it, and one of the nails came out. This nail here is a handmade nail, and you can see how it was. They were just cut of such a nature, and then the heads were peened over, and that's the way the nails were. They were made back then. So we are going to proceed to take this back. This will probably just come off too. No, we're going to have to unscrew that too. And it'll take more time than you expect to do this stuff. Let's see. If you go in the back here, we're going to see here. This is what the back of this piece looks like. And this is going to come off in stages. These arms, see this, the old stuff here too. It's a lucky they didn't lose that stuff. But if you look over here, these nails are going to have to come off. This is all going to have to come off. And we got some mice stuff, but we also have some writings here. BC 36. And it wasn't the Stone Age of the 1800s. They were still manufacturing things and doing things. These are the screw heads here. They cover it up with the lining so that they wouldn't poke through. They didn't want the poke in the back. So we got the original screw. That's an original screw from the day. Hey, but if you notice too that these screws were on an angle if you looked at the front of it. And the reason was, if they had the screw going straight, it would be poking you right in the back because they didn't have the right size screw. That's what they did back in the day. So we got, this is going to have to all come off. We'll have to put this on. Yeah, now we need. Let's see if I can get that off. Notice here too, it's missing. See the whole side over there? It's missing the wood, the filler pieces right here. It's gone, and they just put that in there as a filler piece. We'll save these. We can re-glue these into place, but they got a few nails holding this one together. Those old nails, they do hold pretty good sometimes. Let's see if I can. There we go. Usually the best way on these to do that because the nails are buried. They got them deep inside. There's lots of them when you do this way. You know. There we go. There we go. So we're going to put this on the side. There's not really a whole lot to do on this piece, but clean it up later. And these pieces we'll put on the side. But like I said, it's not something you can do very shortly. It takes time, and I ain't gonna rush doing this. Video or not, we're gonna have to do it. It has to be done right. Sometimes in these old pieces you'll find names, and even the newer pieces, the more higher end pieces, you'll find people who was involved in making it. This is B36KD. I don't know what that is. It's probably a production number. Look at the Stone Age. So they might have. This could have been a factory in one of these around Connecticut over here. There's quite a few old factories that these old brick buildings. See the wood. This here is the buttons. You don't see the buttons now because they're underneath the black. Look. There they are right there. And I don't know if we're gonna make it with the buttons. We're definitely not gonna put the buttons on the seat. And I'm not a big fan of them on the seat because people drag their butts and they pull on the twine and they break the twine. It can happen. You can see too here, there's not a button to be found on the seat. There was ones, but not anymore. But you see the old wood, raw. It wasn't planed. It was all, rough cut. You got some damage, but this piece is in good shape, though, believe it or not. It's in very good shape. So I knew it was going to be a good one. And you can see here, this is some old felt that they used on top of that. That would be deadened. Natural fibers are dense. And so having something like this would keep the elbow from hitting. But this is the inexpensive type padding. It's completely decayed. It's so old, it just crumbles. When it was new, it's not that bad. It wasn't that bad of a stuff to do it, but hog hair would have been much better. And again, it was more expensive. And a lot of these pieces I found, if they're in this area here, this is an old area. A lot of times they're made in this area. We had Baker's Furniture here in town. That was the oldest furniture store in the country. And it just closed up several years ago. And they had some beautiful stuff that passed through there for the years. But when you had a store like that, a lot of times the stuff was going to be made, around here. And like I told that story about F.H. Eaton, it was a wagon maker earlier. Stafford was a pretty good town as far as industry, and they had a lot of stuff available to them. So I'm going to take this in there. We have screws in here that hold it to this front piece here, and the old cover. See, that wasn't even really going in there. That screw was still short. didn't really make much of an impact. And now we're going to take off the cover that was put on there years ago. See the buttons? They were polished like painted steel. That's what they had there. It's not bad. They were made. Now, this stuff here is called GIMP. It's what they use to cover the nail heads on this particular piece. In the old days, before glues and such, hot glues, they used GIMP tacks. And they were very much, you see right here, it's hard to tell, they're so decayed. And if you see here, it is just a small head. Real long too, by the way. There's more than necessary, that's for sure, just to hold the GIMP on in place. Small head so you didn't really see it so much, but you saw the braid covering it up. Nowadays we have GIMPs that are that we glue on with hot glue, and it does a very nice job. You don't have to have these. And when this was put in, this was in somebody's mouth, and that's how it's applied. These were put in their mouth at some point. The upholstery tacks like this were put in somebody's mouth. They had a magnetic hammer, and I could put these down faster than you can with a staple gun.
Look at that.
So that's how they would put it on. They'd go like this, and my father was very fast, and just a couple times we ate them. They tell you to eat bread, and never had any problems. Can't go through a metal detector though in the airport. So we're going to take this off, and we're going to see what's inside. And the last time that this was put, somebody was inside, was in the 1800s. And there's a lot of stuff to be done. Now, for fabric as old as it is, this cotton lining is very brittle, and this horsehair fabric is still very strong. I tell you, these people today think that the older people were dummies. They weren't dummies. They were very smart. Now you see, they had a lining type material put over the front here. Now, you see here, more of it right here. They used it, I'm just seeing what they did. Things would be a little different than with me. This is that sisal type material. This is not the cocoa fiber here. This is sisal. This is the pig hair, the hog hair. We talked about they use this in different things. This was, like I said, this was a premium material. This stuff was less expensive. It was still, hey, it lasted for so long. I wouldn't say anything was better then. Now we're going to take this, roll it up so we don't make a big mess. You see the way the springs are. Looking at this. They always told me that it was, I always hear the line in this trade. They always hear that it's a dying trade, boy. They'd say, fabric salespeople. But you know what? Some of these fabric salespeople are almost 80 years old, I know. And that was told to them, and they were in the business their entire life. So it's not a dying trade. It's not many, you know, it's a very rewarding type of trade to do because you get your results. When you complete your task, you get your treat. You get money, and then you get a big thank you from the happy customer. And when you sit at a desk, you're a number. And people long for this. They don't have it. Somebody added that. See, look. I'm looking at this. Oops, sorry. See, they didn't have a piece long enough to go all the way. So this gives you a lump. It gives you more strength. If you didn't have this piece when you upholster it, it would slope too much, and it just won't visually look right. And this piece here, you can see here when they made that type of saw, still rough cut, but yet it's on the curve like that. And you can still see the saw marks at some point. It looks like some sort of scroll saw that they used to make that. Rough cut, the old nails. So I'm gonna take this off here because that's not going to be, and that's something we're probably going to use over again because it's so bad. It's just, like I said, the masters back then. They weren't always the masters. Just like people today. Now I got to cut this here up top. This is the way they used to do it back then. They'd secure it, the tops of the springs. But the main twine, spring twine, is, I don't even see any twine there. I'm gonna see. They didn't even do that. Tie it with spring. But what we see here is we see the way somebody made this many, many years ago in the 1920s. Could have been Depression era, you know, I'd say, from the types of that material. But that's that looks like some sort of apron.
That's what I was thinking. It's like an apron that they just had laying around.
And that's where, right, there's, like you say, right here. HGH. That's it, and that was doubled right here. So it's nothing else going to be found. HGH. Human growth hormone. I don't think so. Let's finish this. Let's get inside here and see if we've seen some interesting things in here so far. I mean, an old apron. Get it cleaned up. Next time we pick it up, do some work. But everything comes together and something's nice and clean and prepped. I can see it differently and make it because I'm more familiar with seeing stuff not done, I mean apart, than it seems like all together. I visualize it much better. You get thrown off when you see somebody do something different and it's not right or it's messed up. And when you see something as a bare frame, you can start. There's a lot of preparation work in before you start doing any work. Clean up. We got to take all the tacks out of the frame so that it's a nice surface to tack. And with the old wood like this, the old wood becomes punky. You could take a piece of oak. Becomes so old you can take your thumbnail and scratch down quite a distance into it because it's just the way it is. It's very, very old, but inside it's still pretty good. The outside becomes just kind of like a dry rot of some sort. Doesn't mean that it's not good. Makes me wonder about this, that that apron or whatever was inside. I'm seeing double layers. We have a ticket here too. This was you can see here, there was some sort of label. This is probably just they would repurpose the shipping bags for cotton and so on. Well, that could be the outside label for, but this is a shipping thing. What it was. Some letters here too. In the old days, so there's two layers. There's something that was done inside of this thing. I think somehow they did some work on the inside of this because we had two layers. We got this on the inside. I just peeled off a layer that was sewn on top. So it leads me to believe that we have an apron. I don't think the people that made it would have put an apron in. That would have been done on a later date. So I'm thinking that somebody has been inside and they weren't happy with how it's set with the springs. And this is, pretty, too bad. I've seen all that before where it gets so decayed that, see, there's two layers of that twine like that. That's not typical. We got something written here.
Dayville, Connecticut.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, like I was telling you before, a lot of these pieces are made locally.
What does it say?
It's Dayville, Connecticut. But I can't tell what this is. It starts with an M. Something's faded out. Natural fibers, they rot, they decay, they just dry rot. You got double layers of this. But I think somebody's been inside this before and did some work. I don't know, they might have, I'm looking at those steel buttons. And I don't know if those are original. Somebody tried to, I think, maintain it at some point. It had issues maybe many years ago, and they added the buttons. Because of these seat springs are never going to be comfortable. Never were tied. Which is kind of odd. Usually, the springs are going to be tied. This is not enough to hold it in place. You have to use regular spring twine, and they're going to do a real nice job tying the springs. And we'll see if it's ever been done, which I doubt it's never been done. I mean, this is probably the original cover in here. Just went over the top. A lot of those upholstery shops back then, everybody had stuff reupholstered. And there's people that did the fast and dirty back then too. I see it a lot. They'll cover over, some pieces come in with covers, one after another. Old upholstery, you find 5 layers of upholstery fabric. Got some more here. Of course you can't. G something there. But it's so decayed. Connecticut, I can see that. Conn. What we got in here is what we have here is this cocoa fiber. Sometimes in the old days too, you'd find wood shavings, and the wood shavings was cheap. I don't know if that's wood shavings or what, but it's an old fiber, but it crumbles. And the reason why you say, well, what's all this stuff here for? That was put there for a reason. So when you set that spring, without that, you get a certain spring, the way the way it's wound. And that come down hard, it's going to make the noise. They stuff the inside those springs like that so you don't hear anything. And that's the reason why. So we'll do something similar to that too. But these springs are good and old. You know, springs, if you look at the nails there, they're not even rusty. Everything seems like it was better back then, including people. You can see that the wood, for as old as this is, there's no other nail holes in what you see. Now, if this was reupholstered before, the proper way is that you're going to take the tack out. Now you get a hole. Sometimes with these old pieces that were used, not really abused, but because people would take good care of it back then. But they'd reupholster it because Mama wanted things to look nice. And so it'd be reupholstered and be reupholstered so many times that this sometimes becomes a problem because these tacks become like little wedges. And over time, they will raise havoc with the wood that you'll have a tough time putting a nail into it to have it hold. And so you have to do everything around that. And you have to, you restore it. It's a teardown process. When you make something new, you're just assembling. But to take something down, and something that's 100, 200 years old, it can be very, very time consuming, and you got to make it the old ways. And they just don't do that stuff nowadays with the furniture. Furniture's not made this way. It's made with planned obsolescence in mind. So that's pretty much what it is with this type of trade. I think we're gonna get some feedback from the people. And we're gonna see what they think, and they can watch this unfold till the customer takes possession of it, and they're gonna be very happy, guaranteed. So.